I'll just start that. So, hi everybody, thanks for joining us. I'd like to kick us off by acknowledging we are all joining this call from First Nations land. So I have the privilege to be joining you from Meanjin on the country of the Yuggera and Turrbal peoples and pay my respects and acknowledge every day working in the climate space that First Nations wisdom of their custodianship for the tens of thousands of years on this continent. It brings the wisdom into the work we do around resilience, regeneration, and the responsibility we each have to hand over a better place for future generations. I think I know most of you, but those I don't. I'm Lisa Cliff, the director of the Better Futures Australia program, a platform for leaders across all sectors and subnational governments to work collectively on driving the ambitious or 1.5 aligned national climate action. So today we have the standard. This is one of our quarterly roundtables, our second for 2025, where we'll have a quick fire round of updates from the 5 sector working groups, representative from each of those, along with some of our partner organisations and allies that have external coalitions and alliances and industry bodies that are also doing awesome work out there on climate. So always very helpful sessions for me. I'm not sure about you guys, but you're here, so hopefully. And really looking forward to hearing in particular what your priorities are for the first 100 days of the next term of government. So hopefully you're all looking after yourselves in the busy time leading up to your democracy sausages on the weekend. So I do have some slides I've put together as something a little bit different today, just so we can gather your input in response to a poll for post-election to help guide how we can be the most helpful for you. So I'll just share my screen. Bear with me. Okay, sorry that took so long. I have far too many windows open. I should have taken care of that before. Hopefully many of you can empathize. Today, just a refresher or reminder or introduction for those of you new to the BFA world. So we are a alliance for climate action and an accelerator partner to the Race to Zero campaign, the UN's campaign to get non-state actors, the private sector and subnational governments and civil society orgs and other entities contributing to the global climate ambition and negotiations to play a constructive role and make their contributions towards the global climate commitments. So our theory of change is if we mobilise and support the real economy leaders across Australian society and the economy to act and commit and make their pledges publicly to 1.5 aligned action, then it's rational that the federal government will follow with stronger policy settings and stronger action themselves. So that's the core of the work that we do, and we've got some stellar sector working groups that have been active for some of them nearly 5 years. And our goal for today's call is to share those updates and see where we can align on our sector-specific advocacy priorities for federal policy and ambition, but also the federal policy priorities. And we've had the budget that came out in March, and we have heard a lot from the election candidates' platforms on what might happen and what policy context we might find ourselves in kicking off next week. So as we go through today and hear updates from people, it is trying to keep it to a short amount of time to keep us all on track for everything else we need to achieve this week. Please do use the chat function and put any links or questions in there, and any chasing of people you'd like to follow up with as we go. So we know globally it's a bit of a shambles. So Trump's tariff wars and lots of things moving fast. But we also have heard some positive developments with Simon and the meetings last week, and China confirming that its next NDC will cover all sectors and all greenhouse gases. So lots of progress and ambition potential still at play globally, and how that plays out with a potential COP31 in the Pacific region is also something we're all constantly thinking about. I know I am. And there's also a lot of civil society organizations globally pushing for more ambitious, investable and participatory NDCs, inclusive NDCs, so the updated national climate plans. And I saw last week too, WWF International put out a paper on a NDC that incorporates a fossil fuel phase out. So that's also something we've been talking about with our BFA community on what a NDC plus or an NDC that's actually 1.5 aligned looks like, and how we might talk about that and incorporate that with different constituencies and audiences. So we'll chat about that a bit today. And there's also talk about how we build momentum and also strengthen those partnerships for a high ambition and high integrity COP31. Crossing our fingers and toes that will hopefully be announced maybe at the June intersessional post-election. So we are seeing some positive signals still from what came out in the March budget. It was described as a bit of a nothing burger by lots of people, understandable with the state of things. But yeah, it was disappointing to see not a lot of new funding for climate ambition. There were some future commitments made, and the funding for nature and environment, so our nature-based solutions and land use approaches was also very disappointing. So nothing really around meeting the 30 by 30 target and other key pieces like that. And not any budget really set aside for COP31, although it may or may not be hidden in certain parts of the papers. So it's clear that you all won't be getting bored anytime soon, and advocacy and our collective voice is still very much needed to raise ambition, no matter which way the election goes on the weekend. So, and inviting your takes in the chat and any commentary you have and would like to share, and please do make your comments in your updates shortly. So the post-election scenarios, each of our sector working groups, this has come up in our recent meetings, and everybody is very conscious that depending which way it goes, there might be a need to lean into subnational ambition a bit more. But either way, we need to maintain the clarion call for a stronger 2035 target and the updated NDC, even though we've heard Dutton and LNP say they won't have any form of target other than net zero by 2050. It's positive that they won't withdraw from the Paris Agreement, but that's positive is probably an overstatement. So yeah, it's also there's a lot of policies that will need to be protected that we've made progress on with all of your hard work, and lots of positive things with commitments earmarked for the things like the battery household program, the green metals and future made in Australia pieces, and other great things that can potentially happen so long as we keep the pressure on and show that there is that real economy support and expectation there. And I'll just quickly throw to our excellent intern Greta from the University of Sydney doing her capstone masters with us, just to share a bit on one of the examples of the pieces of policy analysis that people are doing and our working groups are doing behind the scenes, just to identify where we can play a positive role. So she's been looking into the climate disclosure laws. Thanks, Greta.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, so I'm doing a analysis right now of the mandatory disclosure, climate disclosure policy, and I've got analysis on three potential post-election scenarios for a weakening, strengthening, and business as usual. And hopefully this can help to inform some advocacy efforts and where to focus in on in the first 100 days of government. So that's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Greta. And in terms of our priorities, our working groups, and lots of the updates and what's been shared by our allies and friends, we've tried to round it down. So we've got the key framing really, which is still very much cost of living relief. So cost of living action, and that includes some updates even with the investor and business community around the cost of not acting will still land well there. So the materiality and risk piece. So keeping that frame in mind and the opportunities of a clean economy will guide our post-election work. And then we've also heard that there's priorities still around the fossil fuel phase out, but maybe the fossil fuel subsidies and a step change approach with those members beyond that work with stakeholders beyond the traditional climate movement. And yeah, other pieces around sustainable finance and the multi-level, multi-sector NDC piece and the investable and more credible sector plans to deliver there. So our upcoming actions and our plans within the BFA team, I will throw to my colleague Kira, who's been running some sessions with some of our excellent business and finance partners, and we're also hoping to chase a chat with our local government friends this week to progress our post-election plans with councillors and mayors. So over to you, Kira.
Hi everyone, great to see you here today. Yeah, just a quick update on some work in progress and plans post-election. And as Lisa said, there's a big focus on that's for you. So yeah, a big focus on our work towards an ambitious NDC. And so our first kind of huddle, our group, was with the business-led NDC advocacy group that we started this week. We had our first partner session. And this is kind of through our work with Mission 2025 and Global Optimism, with the help of Andrew, ECSDA. And so this is all about kind of aligning on shared advocacy agenda for an updated NDC. And it was a really positive meeting Monday night, and kind of got lots of interest from Race to Zero and UNFCCC, and really come out with 2 points that we need to mobilize the real economy voices in the business industry sector and engage with government. So we're looking at a late May, early June roundtable with government. And then, yeah, the second kind of grouping of work would be with local government, and hopefully chatting with Lou from ICLEI this week to see what we can do there to kind of pull those voices in, and looking at June, July for, again, a government roundtable. And then, as Lisa said, we'll hope to coordinate a multi-sector roundtable with our Brazilian Pacific friends, linking the COP30 with COP31 momentum, and sharing that, regionally grounded agenda. So we've got lots of work to do, and hopefully, including your voices into those different streams, but they will all work towards the same goals of an ambitious NDC for a credible COP31.
Thanks, Kira, and thanks everyone. So that's the update from us, and now I'm super excited to hear from each of you. So please do, as we throw to people, put your questions in the chat and introduce yourselves, where you're calling from, the country you're on, and the organisations and roles you may hold. They keep it short because I know some of you have a dozen or more hats. So and before that, though, I'll just quickly share a poll. Sorry, Jordan, would you be my excellent colleague, Jordan? We'll just quickly share a poll with you to capture your input on what we just shared. Give you a moment for that.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. So the first question is, which post-election priority do you see as the biggest opportunity for cross-sector impact? And the second question is, what's missing from current policy efforts? Second question is an open text field, so put in a short response there if you can think of anything. So results are coming in. We're seeing stronger 2035 targets, leading the charge at 62%. And can you all see the results once you've submitted? No, might have to end the poll to show the results, but we'll do that in a minute. A couple more responses are coming through. Does anyone need more time? It's a rapid poll.
Seems to have petered out, Jordan. So yeah,
I think we'll end it. We'll share the results. So can you all see that now? Results, so 58%, so stronger 2035 targets, followed by just transitions, and then electrification and phase out fossil fuels third. And then we have a range of opportunities that may be missing, which we'll go through after the call. Yeah, anything else on that?
No, that's all for now. Thanks, Jordan. So first up, I'd like to introduce before we get into the quickfire updates from our sector reps, I'd like to introduce the excellent Jack Herring from Influence Map. So they've just put out a bit of a I don't know what you call it, briefer on the lobbying activities in Australia around Future Made in Australia. So super useful piece of analysis that you should all be sharing immediately after this call. So over to you, Jack.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Lisa, and hey, everyone. Great to meet you all. So as Lisa mentioned, my name's Jack Herring, and I'm the Australia Program Manager at Influence Map, and am joining from Ngunnawal country this afternoon. So just for some quick context, Influence Map is an independent climate risk think tank that tracks and assesses corporate climate policy engagement, and we tend to partner with investors, campaign groups, and businesses to promote corporate accountability and ideally remove barriers to the implementation of science-based policy. And our main program is our Lobby Map database, which maps the real-time climate policy engagement of over 700 companies and 300 industry associations. So as Lisa mentioned, our latest Australia research looked at corporate engagement with the Future Made in Australia plan, analysing around 185 consultation responses from 60 companies and industry associations on 8 of the key initiatives under the plan. And I'll just very briefly speak to 3 of the key findings. I will pop my details in the chat, so please do feel free to reach out with any questions around the research itself or about our work more broadly, as we're always very keen to explore how our data can support the work of other groups in this space. So the first finding is that overall corporate engagement with the Future Made in Australia agenda was supportive, with around half of total responses supporting the climate measures included in the plan. In contrast, around a quarter displayed oppositional positions, such as advocating for support measures for fossil fuels, while another quarter communicated mixed or unclear positions. This does represent a higher level of support than Influence Map has observed in our previous research, and notably support came from a broad range of sectors that have historically not engaged positively with climate-related issues, including companies from across the utilities and mining and minerals sectors. The second finding is that, no surprise, negative corporate responses to the plan were largely dominated by the automobile and fossil fuel sectors. So the fossil fuel sector in particular appears to be maintaining a pattern of entrenched opposition to climate policy, even as broader corporate support for action grows. And notably, this research suggests their positions are increasingly at odds with the direction of the wider economy, and that they appear to be becoming increasingly isolated in their advocacy. And then the final finding is that there appears to be comparatively little corporate support for nuclear energy power generation in Australia when compared to support for the clean energy initiatives in the Future Made in Australia plan, suggesting that nuclear is not seen as a priority solution by most of corporate Australia. I just wanted to flag that while any takeaways obviously do need to be qualified by acknowledging that businesses will generally be more likely to throw support behind initiatives that include incentives and support measures as opposed to emissions regulation policies, the analysis does hint at a potential shift in wider corporate climate engagement in Australia. So as mentioned, supportive advocacy appears to now be coming from a cross-section of companies that may be traditionally viewed as barriers to progress, suggesting that corporate support for the energy transition is more mainstream than opponents typically suggest. And obviously, while this is an encouraging trend, it's imperative that meaningful direct engagement from across the economy does extend beyond the Future Made in Australia plan to climate policy more generally, starting with a science-aligned 2035 target, as Lisa and co have outlined here. So I'll leave things there. Apologies, Lisa, just conscious I went over my allocated time. But yeah, thanks again for providing the space, and I'll pop my details in the chat now and welcome any follow-ups afterwards.
Nice. Awesome work, Jack. And I'm sure, yeah, many people will hopefully share. And I also put a link to our reshare in the chat. So please do everyone jump in and give that a boost on LinkedIn. So I will now introduce the excellent Andrew Peterson from BCSD, and we also have Michael Bones to follow from IGCC with the Corporate and Finance Working Group updates. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks. I feel like I'm on a game show host or Celebrity Squares. Anyway, all right. So here's my my less than 2 minute take on current activities of Corporate and Finance Working Group. I think the mandate has become synthesized and not simple, but certainly focused, but increasingly urgent. So the desire to see corporate and finance leaders behind a credible pathway to a much stronger 2035 NDC and high integrity Pacific hosted COP31. And two elements or near-term priorities have been identified. The first being credible corporate transition planning. And so the work that's being done by the NDC, the Just Transition or Transition Planning Work Group has been quite critical to this, where the need to find, a shared position on how we lift integrity standards, limit offsets to residuals, embed science-aligned pathways has been the subject of much discussion amongst that group. We've already heard the work that's being done around climate-related financial disclosure, so I won't talk too much about that. But the other, as Kiara said, was the NDC advocacy cadence, and we already had this meeting on Monday evening, which I thought was a really important business roundtable to kick off how we start to look at what asks we want even before Australia does begin the difficult but important task of drafting this submission. The next deadlines, I think, are the 28th, 29th of May for this post-election roundtable with government to lock in that ambition. And then I think we agreed as a group at the meeting on Monday that there would need to be some important policy briefs and joint communiques within the period June to August that would all feed into not only the NDC, but also what was happening at COP30. Also, I think important to call out the call out for a clean fossil fuel COP31 strategy. That's in the process of collaboration with civil society partners to set an integrity criteria for sponsorship and delegate participation. And I think it's true, certainly from the BCSD perspective, that business must lead by example in that. So the call to action for members at the moment: share the organisational intel to redefine the joint position on transition planning credibility, nominating speakers and resources for both the roundtable on the 29th of May, but also engaged in the communique, and then sharing and engaging with legal and potentially audit, accounting and investor networks about the advocacy for unified backing of the technical elements. Hand back to Lisa.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. And I'll follow Tennant's lead and say, Michael, come on down.
Thanks, Lisa. And sorry, just because I'm dialing in on Beth's behalf, speaking just to our immediate plans, first 100 days. Great.
Yes. Yeah. Priorities for the investor community. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
great.
Michael.
So, yeah, for those who don't know, I'm from the investor group on climate change. So we'll essentially be continuing our key priority policy advocacy positions with the new parliament. The first being commitment to a strong and sort of maximally ambitious 2035 target in line with the CCA's advice, which we expect should come relatively soon after the new government is sworn in. The second is around legislating durable national frameworks for decarbonisation, so the sector plans, but also for adaptation and climate risk, so the National Adaptation Plan and the climate risk assessments. We want those embedded in the Climate Change Act so that they're being updated and bringing that stability over time, so they can be updated and improved. The third is around ensuring that there's funding and a sustainable finance taxonomy developed for adaptation and resilience. It's currently excluded. That's a big oversight, so we're trying to get that included. And finally, given there's been different modelling produced recently around the actual economic damages from increasingly extreme weather and financial markets actually repricing climate or properly pricing climate risk into the market, we'll be calling for a comprehensive stress test of Australia's financial system to global warming. So yeah, those are our sort of top 4 policy recommendations: 2035 target, durable frameworks, taxonomy for adaptation, resilience, and a comprehensive stress test.
Good one. Between you and Andrew, I'm always impressed with how succinct and articulate you can be in communicating such complex policy structures. Well done, both. And I'll also use this moment to throw to Tennant in case you have some priorities and updates to share from our friends at AI Group. Thanks, Tennant, for joining us.
Sure thing. We will see what happens on Saturday. Either way, there will be a significant focus on deliverability and implementation and just lifting the cadence at which Australia can deploy a lot of clean energy infrastructure and related projects. The 2035 target will be an important focus. We don't have a magic number in mind, and our focus, I think, will be that a number can be delivered. And so should be the spur to a broader effort to lift the capacity to implement through particularly and most obviously in energy infrastructure deployment, but we will need to see a lot get done well beyond the energy sector. Like a broken record, but the final outcome of the carbon leakage review and progressing the recommendations of that will be relevant if it's a Labor government. That will go into the circular filing cabinet, I fear, if there is a coalition government. and COP31 will be a significant focus. If it is a coalition government, which seems, based on the polling, ever less likely day by day, but you never know. And we've been surprised by differences between polls and elections before. Then a really important focus of advocacy will be around continuing the delivery of a lot of essential electricity infrastructure, even while that government would be trying a lot of different things to bring its nuclear ambitions to fruition. There's just a huge amount of um, renewable generation, transmission, storage, and gas peakers that need to be delivered in the next 10 or 15 years, whether or not there is a pot of nuclear gold at the end of a rainbow after that time. And it would be really dangerous to drop the ball on all of that in the meantime. I'll hand back.
Excellent. Thanks, Tennant. And I hope you've all subscribed and are listening to Let Me Sum Up. Some great analysis there. And I will now my colleague Quimby is going to put an update from Monica and Hudson from the Materials and Embodied Carbon Leaders Alliance in the chat. So they send their apologies. They're in a meeting with the New South Wales government currently, but their update is sharing that there's considerable progress still being made across the construction materials sector, and the government procurement lever is one of their strongest ways to create change across materials and embodied carbon. So lots of positive work still progressing there, and there has been some collaboration through these sessions with our council and city friends with the collective buying power. So one great example of an alliance and where the cross-sectoral solutions can help. So they send their apologies, and now I'd like to throw to Daniel Sherrill, if you're there, Dan, and he's here to hopefully give an update on behalf of what's happening at the Australian Council of Trade Unions and their work with the Renew Australia for All coalition. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
No problem, Lisa. You caught me just on my way. I'm in back-to-backs all day, so I'm making lunch right now. If you can put somebody just ahead of me, and then I'll...
Yep, no worries. We will go to Hannah. Hannah, are you there to give an update? Hannah Morris. To give an update on behalf of the Health Working Group. Thanks for joining us, Hannah.
Thank you, Lisa, and thanks everyone. I'm Hannah Maurice, joining from Wurundjeri Land in Naarm. I'm a research fellow at the University of Melbourne in the School of Pop Health. And I wasn't at our last working group meeting, but so I'll just be reading off our notes. I know that CAHA have an update in that they have released an election scorecard to help people think about which parties are doing well in terms of climate and health policy. Their scorecard kind of broadly agrees mostly with the Greens Party on social determinants of health, leadership, financing and government, a sustainable climate resilient healthcare sector, and other points. We also have an update from ANMF, Caitlin from ANMF. They were happy to see the success of Renew Australia for All campaign in achieving the $2.3 billion commitment to batteries. They've also put out 2 articles on sort of nurses' perspectives on nuclear energy, and they were keen for people to contribute in the comments, as there were some energy expert keyboard warriors going up against some of those views. And then Healthy Futures, Ray from Healthy Futures noted that their electric healthy hospitals budget bid was not successful, but they'll continue to push that post-election, and they're currently fundraising for that campaign. I also put in a budget bid for an air pollution anti-idling sort of awareness campaign that was not successful, but we are continuing to have conversations with the Federal Department of Health, Federal Department of environment and infrastructure, as well as trying to get it off the ground locally in Victoria. And I guess the other kind of key items that we are focusing on is to continue to make sure that the National Health and Climate Strategy and that sort of committee and that unit receives adequate funding to be able to implement those 4 objectives of the strategy. Anecdotally, what we heard was there was agreement that this should exist, but then very quickly the funding towards that department got watered down, and it made it very hard for anyone to implement anything from that strategy. We heard from Jed Kearney, who's kind of the MP that's chauffeuring this piece of policy through, that unfortunately they didn't get any budget commitment from Albanese in the latest budget. But he said, should he be re-elected, it's going to be something that he wants to focus on. So that's kind of Chatham House Rules, a conversation that we've been privy to.
Excellent. Very useful insights. Thanks, Hannah. And yeah, lots of great complementary efforts from our friends across the health and climate space. So I'll throw to Lou from ICLEI Oceania. You've got to run off soon for another meeting, just to give an update from the local councils and cities working group, and then we'll come back to Dan, and hopefully he's had his lunch. Thanks, Lou.
Thank you, Lisa, and hello and welcome from Wurundjeri country. We're manager of ICLEI Oceania. I haven't met everyone yet, but hope to in person. A number of things. Bigger picture stuff. Yeah, of course, ICLEI for our GMA track is very, very engaged in the COP process, as you know, and we're kind of in this strange limbo, waiting for next week's election results. Almost feel like we should have this meeting next week, but we're ready to hit go on a number of tools and support kits and resources to start the process with key partners like the Q and others to roll out.
Lou, sorry, we're having audio issues. It might be when you're not facing your screen.
Okay, sorry, I don't have my headphones with me, so I'll try to not be Italian and talk without and stay still. So very much ICLEI is very excited about the Australian COP. Also the bigger issue regarding Turkey too, and what's been happening with the really unsavoury incident with the Mayor of Istanbul, who's a key ICLEI ally too. So there's also some bigger geopolitical issues at play there. So we're very keen to, as I said, hit go on that. We're also already moved on the work we intend to do through ALGA and through the National General Assembly. So we're in the process of planning for a range of allied advocacy issues to be held at Canberra in a couple of time. So we're looking at a range of side events on that to ensure that voice of local government's heard, that we can also bring in key allies and also bring in some of the authors who are working on the UNFCCC papers, and also, as I said, it's very, very much a key time for ICLEI. We're looking forward also to being part of a grassroots and community-led exercise to ensure that things like the town hall COP are really brought down to community level. So we're hoping to be able to shape things like community grants or actual tangible actions to ensure that COP30, kind of Australian COP, which is likely to be in Adelaide, from what I hear, is going to be really reinvigorating the whole notion of COP process advocacy. Anything you want to add there, Sharon?
I think you've covered everything quite well, Lou. Maybe just to wrap up by saying that with the prospects of Australia hosting the next COP with the Pacific Islands, we have a real opportunity as the local government working group to profile local governments in the leadership space, take up space where certain national governments waning, and show solidarity and support, particularly to vulnerable communities. And we could be a great model for that. So looking forward, of course, to the outcomes of the election, and should be, a bumper year ahead regardless, though. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon, and thanks.
I'd also quickly add too, just before I forget, Lisa, we're also very much involved through you and SCAP and a range of other partners through forums like the Pacific Urban Forum, where we're keen to also extend the opportunity for our mayors in the Pacific to also be heavily involved in the whole COP process. And PNG and Solomon's are very, very, very senior officials are very supportive of this process, and the Pacific Open Forum, which should be in Port Moresby in October, is very much in a position to be a kind of almost like a pre-COP event. So we'll share more on that shortly.
Excellent. Thank you. Another key date to add to our calendars. So I'll just quickly throw to Scott McHenry from Eastern Alliances for Greenhouse Action, another key member of our local gov working group, in case you've got any updates, Scott, and then we'll come back to you, Dan.
Just quickly, in the next 100 days, we're going to continue the campaign that we started pre-election, which was we allowed our councillors to go and speak to candidates in the 3 marginal seats that are in my patch and some of the others in neighbouring municipalities. So far, we've met about 7 candidates. We've got a few more lined up. So we'll be pushing the key wrapper asks, the 5 billion immediate funding and 50 billion over 10 years, and a partnership with local government on how you would deliver that, particularly the vulnerable household upgrade piece, and also recognising local government's contributions in the NDCs. So that'll roll on. Thanks, Lisa.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. Keep up the great work on all those detailed submissions. And Dan, good to see you've doubled down your lunch. Sorry about the rush.
All good. I've not, in fact, eaten my lunch, but it is prepared and sitting in front of me for after this call. So I'm Dan. I'm the Senior Advisor on Climate and Energy at the Australian Council of Trade Unions. We represent 1.8 million workers and their families around the country. And there's going to be a lot on in the next term of government. We, like everybody else, are waiting with bated breath for the results on Saturday night. But not only are we waiting, we are fighting extremely hard to ensure that Labour retains government, the only one of the 2 major parties that has anything approaching a coherent climate and energy strategy. So we hope our efforts bear fruit on Friday. Sort of, if they do, but to some extent, regardless of whether they do, there are a number of pieces on our radar for the first 100 days of the next government, many of which have been mentioned already, but I'll just go through them quickly. So first, with my Renew Australia hat on, ACTU is one of the members of the 9-member steering committee of Renew Australia. And under the new government, we are going to be continuing to campaign for an expansion of household clean energy subsidies, both to include new technologies like electric appliances and efficiency upgrades, but also to include the approximately 33% of Australians that are missing out on the household clean energy revolution entirely, namely renters and some low-income people. So we want to expand that. Simultaneously, we're going to be doing a much bigger, more concerted and more public push around climate adaptation and resilience and the enormous amounts of investment and regulatory change we need to do to get Australia up to speed on that. We are currently arguably the most climate exposed country in the OECD, and our policy making around climate adaptation is woefully lagging. Michael Bones, just to name some potential cross-sectoral cross-pollinations, would love to talk to you about the finance taxonomy for climate adaptation that you guys are working on after the dust settles on the election. Like everybody else, we'll be paying attention to the sector plans and their synthesis, I suppose, up into a 2035 target. We don't have a magic number either, although we have a floor beneath which we will not go. We're particularly interested in the transport sector plan because we think that has that has garnered inadequate attention relative to its importance for the decarbonization of our economy writ large. Transport will soon be the highest emitting sector. We also want to make sure that Australia's NDC and 2035 target includes a section on just transition, since the advent of the net zero economy gives us a really good story to tell that can be a model for other countries in the UNFCCC framework. A few other bits and bobs. We're going to be paying close attention to the new energy workforce strategy, which is likely to be released, we hope, in the first couple of months of the next government, and will be really important for how we develop the clean energy workforce on time. Spoiler alert, one way to get a lot of people into a lot of jobs very quickly is to make those jobs attractive. You'll be shocked to know. We are going to be thinking a lot about COP31 with our Pacific trade union partners, and I will end now because the Slavic shut up music has started. So happy to share more with anybody who's interested.
Thanks, Dan. It's good that it's cheery music. No wah, wah, wah or anything, so that's good. Very helpful update as always. And yeah, the adaptation and resilience piece will definitely be one to watch. And I know our councils and cities group is very keen to play a role there. So as well as the follow-up with Michael, I hope you're chatting to Scott and Sharon and Lou. So the transport working group, but I'll quickly check. Sam, you've noted you need to run, but did you want to just quickly voice any updates from our friends at Beyond Zero Emissions and your post-election first 100 days priorities?
Well, we've got a new strategy, which is the National Action Plan and a nationally coordinated action. And we're sort of just waiting, like everyone else, to see how we frame it. But we'll be launching that research on May 21st at the Hunter New Energy Symposium. And we'll be looking for partners to sort of build out the research and sort of implement nationally coordinated action. So you'll probably be hearing more from us after that.
Excellent. Looking forward to it, Sam. And yeah, very keen to collaborate on the region approach and place-based solutions with community and our friends at the Next Economy after the election as well. So now I will introduce Stephen and our transport working group friends, if you're able to give a quick update on your priorities. Thanks, Stephen.
Hi. So we'll just speak to the active transport area. Thanks, Dan, for prefacing what we believe is a real priority with transport transition. The low-hanging fruit really is the short-term and significant transition to make active travel easier by investing in infrastructure and other things. So there's been a national call out from all bicycle organisation and groups like Better Streets and many others for moving so currently active transport mode shares 2%, 1.5%, 2%. Funding federally is 0.1%. So we've gone for a call for moving up from 90 cents a person up to $15 per person per annum, and that will be certainly what we as a bike advocate group will be pursuing. And I know there's a lot of other transport stuff going on, but I'm sure there's someone who can speak to the bigger picture stuff, fuels, cars, and so on. But just really need an opportunity for people to drive less, whatever sort of car it is. And we'll be following up that post-election, of course. That's our 100-day priority.
Excellent. Are there any other transport working group friends on the call that would like to add to that?
The little guys get the biggest voice in the transport group because no one else is here. Woohoo!
All right. Jordan, was there anything to add to that, do you think? Or...
No, we do have Deshan on the call. I don't know if you have anything to add, but the transport working group is meeting regularly. We're going through an exercise at the moment where we're looking at who we have in the room and who else we would like to pull in to the group. Transport's a varied sector with many different disciplines, and realizing that we don't necessarily have full coverage across the transport suite. The invitation is there to other groups and anyone else who'd like to collaborate in the transport sector. It's interesting to see some of those stats shared earlier just around the emissions in transport and how it probably doesn't get the attention that it deserves. So anyone here who wants to collaborate and connect, please feel free to reach out.
I think Hannah's just nominated herself to present at the next working group meeting on the idling off campaign. Good one, Hannah. So I'll just throw to Michaela now to give an update on behalf of the Nature-Based Solutions and Land Use Group. Thanks so much, Michaela.
No worries, Lisa. Always willing to get a call from you just before a meeting to present. Hi, I'm Michaela Jemison. I am the policy coordinator here at Climate Works for our nature, finance and corporates teams. And the Nature-Based Solutions Working Group for BFA has largely been talking about, obviously, the EPBC Act reforms that fell over, unfortunately, at the last hurdle before the election. So looking at particularly around the legislation forming an EPA and an EIA. So for those who don't know the terminology, Environmental Protection Agency is one body that was looking to get up, and also the Environment Information Australia. We've been looking at the budgets at the moment. It looks like there's no funding explicitly in the upcoming budget for the EPA, but we are going to be delving into that a little bit more just to check whether that has been parked somewhere or if it has been taken out particularly. But in general, looking at the budgets going forward, there is a dip in funding overall for nature, even though we do have, the $250 million that has been put aside to been trying to achieve the 2030 by 30 target, which is Australia's commitment to the global agreement to try and conserve 30% of nature by 2030. So those two things are particularly being looked at. It will be interesting if the ALP does get back in, whether Tanya Plibersek will be the Environment Minister. It seems at the moment that she may not be, and that will affect how we potentially engage with the government. And post-election as well, whether it is particularly whether it's a minority government of either side, putting my kind of finance and environment hat on here. This is more speaking from a Climate Works perspective rather than the notes from the working group, which I was not in the last meeting, I'm afraid. I think one of the things that we will be really wanting to encourage is the strengthening of the Sustainable Finance Roadmap rollout. Even though it's largely focused on climate, of course, at the moment, there are elements in there, particularly around nature and data, that will be really integral to having those further steps of nature being added on to this kind of scaffolding that we're creating institutionally. Just this morning, you might hear about it. Climate Works and RIA hosted a Climate Nature Nexus breakfast, looking at that the section of finance and nature. So that's particularly something that we're interested. Also coming back to the larger working group, the nature repair market and support for the further development of that is really going to be key. Again, that's that kind of connection between finance and nature. I'll leave it there, but if anyone wants to really delve into those topics, please reach out to me.
Thanks, Michaela. That's a very generous offer because, we could spend a day just getting into one point you just referenced. But the Nature-Based Solutions and Land Use Group is definitely a bunch of experts on all the land use and nature and food and various things. So, wealth of knowledge there to collaborate on any points or advocacy you may have in that space. And yeah, the 1% for Nature campaign will be continuing and going strong for the next budget. So yeah, very small amounts, small change in terms of our biodiversity conservation efforts and our sustainable land use as part of our climate strategies. So I will then bring on Kelly, the excellent Kelly Court, to give an update from our friends at the Australian Council of Social Service. Thanks for joining us, Kelly.
Hey, Lisa. Lovely to see you. Hi, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Kelly Court, Program Director, Climate and Energy at ACOS. I'm glad you didn't say the Social Sector Working Group because I'm like, but what I'm going to talk about is what a lot of our members are engaged in. So it isn't just Kelly's plan for the first 100 days. You'll be pleased to know. Look, I think a lot of what we'll be focusing on is not too dissimilar to what some other organisations have talked about. So I think the 2035 target is going to be a big one for the next 6 months leading up to the Brazil COP, Australia having to put an NDC on. Well, you'd imagine by then putting the NDC on the table. We did a social sector statement last year, and we've met with Climate Change Authority Board on that. And so we're really keen to work with others on, trying to get an ambitious target. So please reach out around that. Home energy upgrades, so working with Renew Australia for All, as Dan talked about, is a key priority for us, and working with Scott and his team around the role of local councils is another key priority for us in that space as well. And the rental space that Dan mentioned. And then we will also be supporting the piece around resilience and disaster emergency response too. I think COP31 will be a key priority for us, first 100 days and beyond, getting a sense of whether Australia and Pacific will be hosting it, but how do we influence the priorities? So starting to have more in-depth conversations around that. We're really keen to listen to the ALP, assuming they get in on Saturday, to hear what their priority is going to be so we can look at how we can influence and maybe set some agendas if there's gaps as well. And probably the last thing I just want to mention is some of you were involved in the blueprint that we did last year around fair, fast, and inclusive climate action. It was fairly high level where we identified, I think, 12 policy areas. Over the next 12 months, we'll be doing deep dives into those high level policies and actually developing more in-depth policies in those spaces. So really keen to reach out to people on some of those. So like transport's a key one. There was some stuff around water and other areas as well. So yeah, keen to reach out to people.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for all the great work that ACOS does. A great collaborator. And reminding us of the risk of leaving a lot of our fellow Australians behind in our journey to a zero emissions future. So very important work, and continue collaborating after this next term. So now we've got a little bit of time for some discussion, and we've also got a few more questions in a Zoom poll for you. But immediately, does anyone have any questions you'd like to speak to before we go to the poll? No? All right. Jordan, are you able to share the next? Oh, yep, Tanner.
Yeah, just a thing that I don't know that it's really emerged properly onto anyone's agenda yet, but I think it's going to become more and more inescapable. To what extent can Australia and other powers step into the gap that the United States is creating on both scientific funding around climate work and on international development and finance? We haven't yet seen the full dropping of more shoes on to what extent the World Bank and the IMF will need to change course in response to pressure from what is, I think, still their biggest shareholder. But certainly on the science front, it's like it's very, very bad. And there's sort of an opportunity, or we could pick up a lot of incredibly talented people piece of that. But that needs to be accompanied by very large amounts of funding for science if a global diminution is so this is not an AI group position. I don't know that anybody else has got a very
I
active
would
thing there
like
yet.
a offline chat about the AI group submission on Australia's research funding situation, Tennant. I had lots of disagreements with that, so let's take that offline.
I can put you in touch with my colleague who wrote it.
Yeah, excellent. But yeah, great question, I think. And I would definitely love everyone's advice and ideas across the BFA community on how we can bring, the need for more R&D investment in the climate transition to the forefront. And what's happening to our friends and allies in the university sector is always scary and disheartening. And just Kelly and I were in a conversation with some friends working in the climate space and environment space last night, and speaking to the potential of getting the young minds and the university students in a room and influencing them to be part of the change creation that we're all working on. So any immediate reactions or responses to Tennant's big question there? I think we'll have to take that one on notice, Tennant, and we'll follow up in some threads. It's a big question. So, but a good one, and thank you for raising it. Jordan, are we okay to go ahead with that poll? There we go. Excellent.
Yeah, so we have a second part to the poll. 2 questions here. Well, really, they're one and the same. The first part of it is, where do you see opportunities to combine efforts across sectors? And then the second part of that is a free-form text field for anything else that isn't listed there out of those 4 or 5 options. So we'll give it a minute or so for you to give input, and then we'll close it and share the results. Should play more of that music, Quimby, while we're doing this. Let's give it another 20 seconds. Seeing answers coming in. Does anyone need more time? Is anyone typing? Speak now, forever hold your peace. All right, we might close it. So to the first part, 69% is government advocacy meetings that we can line up in the first 100 days. Second to that, joint letters, and then events and the Better Futures Forum equal third. And then I'll post in the chat the various other opportunities so you can see that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Jordan. And yes, noting the point on the ambience music, we should do that for next time. And so thank you everybody for joining us today and for your continued collaboration on our journey to a safe climate and better future for all Australians. So after today's call, we will be circulating a summary of the key discussion points and updates raised, along with any actions, and try and also help you chase and follow up on any commitments to collaborate and coordinate on any of the advocacy priorities discussed. And we'll also be in touch with the relevant sector working groups. If you're not a member of one of the sector working groups and want to play a more active role in the advocacy and ministerial meetings and things like that, please do reach out and let us know. There is a sector working group page on our website with a bit more info. And yeah, otherwise, lots of important work to do in the first 100 days. Everybody talks about how it's critical to lock in the agenda for the next term. And yeah, so please do remember to look after yourselves. And yep, I will be offline from Monday for the next 2 weeks, but my excellent colleagues, Kira, Quimby and Jordan will be reachable for all the things. And for the business and finance roundtable, Andrew and Kira will also be progressing that to lock something in ASAP. So reach out to them with any contributions and ideas to help make that happen with our DQ colleagues and whoever our next minister may be. And we'll continue the conversations and collaboration around how we can strengthen our partnerships and collaborations for all of the real economy leaders and the non-state actors ahead of COP30 in Belém to shape Australia's priorities there, and also try and influence as much as possible so that we make sure we do end up co-hosting a high integrity and high ambition COP31. So lots of background work by all of you, and the coordinated work through the working groups underway. So let's keep this show on the road and create a better future. Thanks, guys, and have a good one.
Thanks. See ya.
Thanks. Bye.